Alright, get ready for a review of the first 5 episodes of She-Ra Princess of Power. As you know, these 5 episodes were actually edited together to make the Secret of the Sword movie, but as I discussed in my very first She-Ra video, Filmation founder and executive producer Lou Scheimer personally didn't like the movie cut of these episodes, so I decided to now review the entirety of these episodes and talk about their individual highlights. A couple of extra trivia bits. Although the movie cut of these episodes is called The Secret of the Sword, the 5-parter storyline is actually called The Sword of She-Ra. The individual episodes are Into Etheria, Beast Island, She-Ra Unchained, Reunions, and The Battle for Bright Moon. And the second tidbit is that the first 3 episodes actually featured an original intro, which is different from the rest of the series, and it's honestly kind of badass.
She-Ra, Princess of Power.
As well, Alan Oppenheimer provides a very Dragon Ball Z-esque opening and ending narration for each episode.
In the last episode, the sorceress sent Adam to the world of Etheria. Adam was to find someone there and give them a very special sword. And now, Chapter 2 of The Sword of She-Ra.
Alright, let's get cracking with Into Etheria. This episode begins with the sorceress having a dream about Hordak capturing baby Adora and is pointed to a gateway by the second power sword. She calls to Adam to go through the portal to find the person the sword belongs to, but keeps otherwise tight-lipped about the purpose of the trip. Well, Adam and Cringer head to a tavern, accost some horde troopers, and take them down with the help of Bo, who then introduces him to the rebellion. Steady on, boys. Well, the boys' actions attract the Horde, who decide to imprison all the villagers and send a force troop, along with their force captain, Adora. Adam becomes He-Man, beats the Horsemen, but then becomes distracted by the sword glowing and gets rather unepically knocked out, which is where this episode ends. Now, Into Etheria is a pretty nifty introduction as we meet Bo, Cal, the Twiggets, and Glimmer, whom I have to say is way more competent in these early episodes than I remembered. And also, I'd forgotten she actually could teleport on the Filmation show. I honestly thought this was an ability she was given in the Netflix version. Unfortunately, this first episode's biggest weakness is the animation direction. Although there are some nice shading effects, Bo and Adam's little tussle with the Horde Troopers just looks awful, and even Hordak looks pretty terrible in this episode. And look, I appreciate seeing Sorceress in her nightie, but are you seriously expecting me to believe she really sleeps with that friggin' falcon hood on? The definite highlight is the battle between the rebels and the Horsemen, especially since Glimmer and Bo are in the thick of it and almost all the Horsemen actually participate. And it's really weird seeing Adora on the side of the bad guys. Well, the next episode, Beast Island, begins with Bo, Glimmer, Madame Raz, Cal, and Battle Cat heading out to Beast Island to rescue He-Man. He confronts Adora and tries to convince her that she's on the wrong side as the Horde abuses the citizens of Etheria. Adora is skeptical, but then goes out to see the Horde's evil for themselves, and here I will say that in the movie cut this part was seriously reduced, which is why Adora's turn against the Horde happened a bit suddenly. Now, if the previous episode's animation was a bit doinky, they luckily make up for it in this episode. Glimmer's little rescue party has some awesome moments overcoming the dangers of Beast Island, and their action scenes are excellent. Plus, it's just kind of sweet seeing Glimmer and Battle Cat interact, and Cat is also really at the peak of his game as well. The low point of this episode, though, might be Madame Raz, whose spellcasting really isn't on the ball. She makes a frying ship, accidentally helps the big monster, but does eventually do good, much to the pleasure of Broomy. The episode then ends with Cal helping He-Man escape, He-Man busting up the Beast Island prison, and Adora confronting Hordak and Shadow Weaver. Weaver puts a spell on Adora and takes the sword, which is where episode 2 ends. Next up, She-Ra Unchained. This episode actually begins with a MacGuffin as Hordak plans to use a giant teleporter to send the Whispering Woods to the Valley of the Lost, but needs people with strong willpower to energize it. Adam decides to go on a solo mission to get Adora on his side and actually disguises himself as a Horde Trooper. However, Shadow Weaver realizes He-Man's ploy because his luscious locks are showing from under the helmet. He-Man does meet up with Adora. Dude, that looks kind of suggestive. And once again gets knocked out. Hordak plans to suck He-Man dry. Of energy, that is, but has to take the whole night because the machine would overheat otherwise. That night, Adora starts getting visions, goes down to see He-Man, then suddenly the sorceress finally spills the beans to Adora, who's been resisting the truth. And she then finally transforms, saves He-Man, who then destroys the teleporter, and the two of them escaped on Swiftwind. Now, this episode unfortunately has some awkward animation. But it is definitely a pretty cool episode as Adora transforms for the first time and swoops in to save He-Man. In fact, the way she transforms Swiftwind is kinda cool since she's actually riding him when it happens. However, this episode has some weird bits. For instance, Hordak has a weird robot arm for some reason. Conversely, we actually see Adora in a nightie, and yeah, fan service might have not been a concept back then, but I do like this. It does feel kind of weird that Hordak just has a MacGuffin in the middle of a five-parter story. However, I do like that She-Ra actually stops Hordak, who manages to fire the teleporter once, thus being doubly useful. This is the episode where we see the most plot progression up to this point. It's pretty kick-ass, and it was kept almost in its entirety in the movie, so there you go. Next up, the most literally titled episode, Reunions. I'll make this plot summary quick. Adam and Adora go back to Whispering Woods, go out and save Queen Angela from the Harpies, reuniting her with Glimmer. Then they go to Eternia, reuniting Adora with her parents, and Hordak follows them, reuniting with his old pupil Skeletor. This episode definitely has some memorable highlights. I really love how in the flashback parts, Morlena throws Skelly like a bay of hay. And I also think He-Man and She-Ra fighting Queen Hunga is a really cool scene. I do think that the Rebels allow Adora to join them a little too easily, but she did save Glimmer's mom, so I suppose that explains that. And it's kind of funny how Hordak and Skelly actually sort of bro out at the end of the episode, considering how antagonistic they are for the rest of the series. Rewatching these episodes, I just noticed how Hordak was a lot more cool-headed in the early episodes. And while Adora reuniting with her parents is sort of touching, it's a bit weird how they instantly know she's their daughter, because they literally saw her last as a baby. And also there's a pretty terrible plot hole, since in this episode's flashback, Man-at-Arms and Sorceress just run away from Hordak's laser in different directions, while in the first episode, Duncan clearly pushed the Sorceress away from the laser. Now, Reunions has a lot of interesting moments, but it's kind of a bumpy episode. It really doesn't flow very well, and does feel an awful lot like a transitional piece. Not saying it's not worth watching, it's just not very coherent. And lastly, the Battle for Bright Moon. This one starts with Skelly and crew disguising themselves as chefs, wheeling Hordak to the palace in a keg, and they capture Adora, who then escapes easily, gets her sword back, and kicks Skelly's crew's asses before heading back to Etheria. Okay, seriously, even though it's kind of funny that Skelly immediately backstabs Hordak when they get to Snake Mountain, this first half of the episode really feels like a bunch of dead weight. Literally the only part of it that's fun for me is how Adora dupes Beastman, and that Randor literally plans to roll his army out to Snake Mountain. Oh yeah, and Cobra Khan had an appearance here, which I completely forgot about. Whoopsie. But She-Ra pretty decisively humiliates Skelly's crew, which feels kinda sad, not gonna lie. Anyway, Adora then goes to Etheria, and alongside her brother, the Power Twins help the Rebels storm Castle Bright Moon and take down the Horde there. This latter half of the episode really just demonstrates She-Ra's powers, like her animal telepathy, since she uses it to get the animals to also help in the battle, and then her Jesus powers when she heals Swiftwind. Beyond some pretty impressive crowd scenes by Filmation standards, though, the rest of this episode is pretty vanilla. Though I guess it's kinda cool seeing Glimmer and Angela fighting alongside each other, there's nothing super unique about the battle itself. So, to sum up, I do have to say the first 3 episodes of The Sword of She-Ra are probably the best ones. They just flow very naturally into each other, and in full-length form, Beast Island in particular is really key to showing Adora why she needs to pick up the fight against the Horde. Now, I do also like the Eternian sections of Reunions and the Battle for Bright Moon, but these two really are the 2 weakest episodes. They feel really forced, like they were rushing to wrap up this initial story arc, and they don't quite have the weight of Adora's character development from episodes 2 and 3, which I definitely consider must-sees from the series. And that was The Sword of She-Ra. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.